Hello, my dear students in 4th primary. How are you? So far, we have finished 2 themes in our mathematics lessons. Today, we will start theme 3. It's talking about fractions with decimals and proportional relationships. We will build on the knowledge and skills we have acquired in the 2 previous themes. In those themes, we اتكلمنا في 2 themes اللي فاتوا عن number, sense and operations وكمان mathematical operations and algebraic thinking. Theme 3 begins with unit 9 fractions. We will focus هنركز بقى في اليونت دي على increasing our practical knowledge of the different parts of the fraction and the way to represent the fractional parts. وكمان هنطبق what we have understood in order to develop the skills of adding and subtracting mixed numbers. Also كمان هنعرف ازاي to practice putting improper fractions in the simplest form. هنعرف ازاي نحط improper fractions في simplest form بتاعه. And we are going to apply وكمان هنطبق what we have learned about fractions in our real life. Let's first watch this video and explore together the topics of this unit.
Apple fractions. Let's look at apples. An apple. Lovely, isn't it? You can learn so much from apples. I can have a whole apple to myself, or share it equally with someone, cutting it in half. I can cut it into other fraction pieces too. Thirds, quarters, sixths, and eighths. Apples can be used in pies. Some pies are round and some are rectangular. What fractions can you see? These delicious pies can be cut up into halves, quarters, sixths, and eighths. I could add the pieces together and subtract them too. I like subtracting more. It means I'm eating pie. Apples can be crushed into pulp and the juice collected to drink. Here are some different apple juice fractions. Here are some different colored apples in a bowl. What fraction of the fruit bowl is red apples? Apples can be with other fruits too. What fraction of this fruit bowl is apples? And what fraction of the fruit bowl is oranges? I better go now. I have some subtracting to do. Yummy!
And now it's very clear from the video that the context of this unit is talking about the food. We will learn about fractions through examples. هنتعلم الفراكشنز من خلال examples وأمثلة that you can easily relate to many situations happened in your daily life. And now let's start together now lesson 1 entitled Let's Build It. In this lesson we will learn هنتعلم about unit fractions and how to identify them. ازاي نحدد الunit fractions. وكمان هنتعلم how to compare non-unit fractions with unit fractions. As a start we need to remember عايزين بقى محتاجين نفتكر مع بعض the concept of numerator and denominator. And now I'll give you some time to write down everything you remember about the numerator and the denominator on a piece of paper and then we will be back. Now, after we have finished, let's see what we have written about the numerator and the denominator. We have studied before that these are the components of the fraction. كلنا عارفين ان النومينيتور والدينومينيتور دول components او الحاجات اللي بتكون لي الفراكشن بتاعتي. They are separated by line. في line كده بيفصل النومينيتور عن الدينومينيتور. That denominator is the total number of equal parts that we have divided. Denominator دايما بيبقى total number بتاعة البارتس اللي عندي. تعالوا ناخد example كده. If I have a piece of chocolate and I divided it to a simple piece of chocolate دي ل 4 equal parts, الدينومينيتور هيبقى كام؟ Yes, الدينومينيتور هيبقى 4 and it will be written under the fraction line. طيب what about the numerator? The numerator is the number of parts used from the total number of parts. This is the number we write above the fraction line. يبقى بكتب ال numerator up وال down. Example, if I distribute لو وزعت 3 out of the 4 pieces, the numerator will be 3. It is written above the line زي ما اتفقنا. يبقى دايما numerator above the line and denominator under the line. This means that I distributed 3/4 out of the whole chocolate. Now, let's move to the activity part at the beginning of access entitled Identify the Unit Fraction on page 3 in your school book. Let's see it all together. And here in problem number 1, as you see here, okay, this is problem number 1. Here we have a circle divided into 2 equal parts as you see. One part is colored, a number of equal parts, 2 equal parts, and I have one colored part or 1 shaded parts. This means that we used one part of the colored part from 2 equal parts. طيب, to write this in the form of fraction, ازاي هكتب الكلام ده in the form of fraction? Which means numerator and denominator. The numerator will be the number of used part أو a number of colored or shaded parts اللي هي زي ما قلنا كانت 1. We will write it above the line. Okay? Now, the denominator is the total number of equal parts, which is what? The total number of the parts are 2. يبقى I will write 2 under here in the denominator. يبقى my fraction is 1 over 2. Let's write it again. My fraction is 1 over 2, which is half. Okay, now let's move to the, yes, I can write it half if I want to write it in the word form. I can write here 1/2 as a word form. Right. This is 1/2. Okay, now we call this a fraction. We call this fraction a unit fraction. Why? ليه اسمها unit fraction? Because the numerator is 1. As you see here, the numerator is 1, then it is called the unit fraction. يبقى خلاص احنا عرفنا any fraction whose numerator is 1 part out of the total number of parts هيبقى اسمها unit fraction. طيب, please notice the rest of the table. Take a look كده على التيبل كله. هتلاقوا ايه؟ هتلاقوا ان shaded part in all the table or in all the problems are only 1 part. في كل واحدة هنلاقي ان فيها 1 shaded part only. So, what do these fractions represent? Yes, great. It's called unit fractions. You can notice also that the word form of the fraction comes from the total number of equal parts in which it is divided, which is the denominator. يعني ايه الكلام ده؟ I mean if the shape is divided into 5 equal parts. لو الشيب بتاعي متقسم ل 5 equal parts يبقى اليونت fraction بتاعته هتبقى اسمها ايه؟ هيبقى اسمها 1/5. طيب, what if it is divided into 6 equal parts؟ لو الشيب بتاعي متقسم ل 6 equal parts يبقى الفراكشن بتاعته اسمها ايه؟ اسمها 1/6 and so on. And now let's move to problem number 2. Problem number 2 here, I have a circle divided into 3 equal parts. Circle اهي divided into 3 equal parts. And as you know, I have only 1 colored or 1 shaded part, right? The word form of the unit fraction will be what? Yes, it will be 1/3. Okay, I will write here 1/3. طيب, what about if I want to write it in the fraction form? Yes, I will write 1 in the numerator and 3 because 3 are all the parts in the denominator. And now let's move to problem number 3. Problem number 3, here I have a shape divided into 4 equal parts as you see here. يبقى all the parts I have are 4 parts. What about the shaded part? I have only one shaded part. طيب, if I want to write it in the word form, how can I write it? Yes, 4 equal parts, يبقى الفراكشن اسمه 1/4. So, I will write here 1/4. Okay? طيب, what about if I want to write it in the fraction form? Of course, I will write the 1 up because I have only one shaded part and all the parts down which are 4 parts. يبقى 1/4. And now I will give you some time to complete the rest of the table on page 3 in your school book and think about a short definition for each concept below the table. We will discuss it when we are back. And now I am sure the unit fractions you have written are 1/5 here, right? And then 1/6. Yes? And the last one is 1/8. Which means 1/5, 1/6, and 1/8 as I wrote them. As for the definitions, I am sure you wrote in your own style some of the information that we have reviewed together at the beginning of our lesson. Now, let's record the definitions in the new chart that we have, and its name is the fraction anchor chart. Please record them in your book. Let's see it all together. Here are the definitions as you see here. The fraction anchor chart. Okay, what about the denominator? What is the denominator? Yes, the denominator, as you see here, yalla, write it with me. Denominator, it is the number of equal parts, meaning shaded or colored parts. This is what is called the numerator. Okay. طيب, تعالوا نشوف what about the denominator. إيه هو denominator? Denominator, it is the total number of equal parts. Okay. طيب, and now what about unit fraction? يعني إيه unit fraction? Unit fraction means a fraction whose numerator represents one part of a whole. زي ما اتفقنا الunit fraction ده النومينيتور بتاعه بيبقى only one. And by now we have explored اتعرفنا مع بعض على الunit fraction in access and how to identify it وازاي نحدد الunit fraction. And those were the first 2 learning targets. هما دول ال2 targets اللي كانوا عندنا in our lesson. Let's move now to the build part on page 4 where we are going to use the unit fractions to compose new fractions. And here as you see unit 4. طيب, it's like the bricks. الفراكشنز دي عامله زي البريكس بالظبط. زي الطوب كده. We want to put next to each other. عايزه احطهم next to each other لغايه لما ابني الوال بتاعتي. البريكس are the unit fractions and the wall والحيطه اللي انا بنيتها is the new fraction we are composing. الفراكشن اللي احنا بنكونه. Now we can understand why the title of our lesson today, let's build it. Okay. Now we were introduced to the idea of composing numbers previously in theme 1. For example, if we have 6,800, 110 and 2 ones. Can we compose a numeral using them? ينفع أعمل لهم composing مع بعض? Yes, it will be 6,812. In order to understand how we can compose fractions, you must understand the relationship. لازم أعرف العلاقة ما بين الunit fraction and the denominator. And now, let's try it out together. Practically, and note that the pattern that happens when the denominator, تعالوا نعرف مع بعض إيه اللي بيحصل لما denominator change and see what happens to the value ونعرف إيه اللي بيحصل للvalue بتاع الunit fraction ودiscover ونعرف العلاقة ما بين the two of them. Now we need to get 2 pieces of paper. عايزاكم بقى كلكم تحضروا معايا 2 pieces of paper of equal size. لازم يبقوا بالظبط نفس السايز. Okay, like you see here, I have 2 pieces of papers. Okay, here are the 2 papers. They are exactly the same. طيب أنا هعمل إيه دلوقتي؟ We will cut the first piece of paper into 2 equal parts. تعالوا كده مع بعض هنقسم البيبر دي ل 2 equal parts like I'm doing here. يلا make it with me. I will cut it into 2 equal parts as you see here. Okay. طيب يلا do it with me. It's very interesting. Okay. And now after we cut this in 2 halves, okay, here I make it like this into 2 equal parts. We consider this part represent the value of the unit fraction. Okay. طيب تعالوا نشوف بقى هنعمل ايه في second paper. السكند paper I will cut it into 4 equal parts. Okay. يبقى I will make it like this. Again I will fold it like this عشان أنا عايزة 4 equal parts. Okay. And then I will cut it like this. يلا I want all of you to do it with me. Okay. يبقى here, like you see here, I have this one and this one. This part represents the value of the unit fraction. Now you will notice in the first paper that the total number of parts, which is the denominator, is 2, right? This is the unit fraction. What will happen to the unit fraction when the total number of parts, which is the denominator, becomes 4? What if the denominator becomes 10? What will happen to the unit fraction? We will notice that the greater the total number of parts, which means that the denominator increases, يعني كل ما الدينومينيتور هيكبر the less the value of the unit fraction. كل ما الدينومينيتور بيكبر الفاليو بتاع اليونت fraction بيصغر. And this is the relation between the denominator and the value of the unit fraction. هي دي العلاقة ما بين الدينومينيتور والunit fraction. We have seen that half, this is the half, is greater than 1/4, right? Of course half greater than 1/4. طيب دلوقتي أنا عايزة أسأل سؤال. Could a quarter ever be greater than a half؟ هو ينفع الكوارتر يبقى أكبر من half؟ على فكرة yes it can be. If the size of the whole we are dividing into parts is different. يعني لو كان ال 2 papers اللي معايا different sizes كان ممكن يحصل ان الاقي الكوارتر اكبر من الهاف. طيب تعالوا ناخد another example. For example, you know that half an orange، لو جبت orange watermelon وقسمت الاورنج into 2 halves هلاقي ان الهاف الاورنج smaller than quarter of watermelon. نص الاورنج هيبقى اصغر من quarter او ربع الووترميلون. And this means that the size of the whole of course matters. Now we know the relation between the denominator and the value of the unit fraction. And now please look at the picture you have. Let's build it activity and try to guess. تعالوا كده to guess which is meant by composing fractions. يعني ايه composing fractions to solve the problems. And now let's move to problem number 1. Here's problem number 1 as you see. Problem number 1. What do you think it means to compose a fraction؟ يعني ايه نعمل composing للفراكشن؟ If we focus لو ركزنا كويس قوي على البيكتشر اللي قدامنا دي هنلاقي ان الكاربنتر، يعني ايه كاربنتر؟ يعني النجار is collecting pieces of wood، بيجمع pieces of wood like you see here which represent together the unit fractions. Each piece represent what؟ كل piece من دول represent unit fraction. الفاليو بتاعها ايه؟ الفاليو بتاعها زي ما احنا شايفين كده 1/4. كل fraction من اللي احنا شايفينهم دول unit fraction الفاليو بتاعها 1/4. طيب when he collects لما يجمع ال 4 parts مع بعض we will have 4 quarters and this is a complete whole piece of wood. 4 quarters يعني هيعملوا لي complete piece of wood أو هيعملوا لي one whole. طيب the idea here that the fraction we compose, الفراكشن we compose should not necessarily مش لازم تبقى less than 1. لما اجمع fraction او اكون fraction مش لازم على فكره تبقى less than 1. الفراكشنز ممكن تبقى less than 1 وممكن تبقى whole 1 وممكن كمان تبقى bigger than 1. أهم حاجة في composing fraction is what? Is that we add smaller fractions. إن إحنا بنعمل addition للsmaller fractions زي الunit fractions عشان نوصل للrequired result. Now I asked a group of students in my class a question. سألت group of students معايا في الكلاس question ونفس الquestion عايزة أسأله لكم برضه. How many unit fractions make a whole؟ أنا محتاجة how many unit fraction عشان أكون whole. Each student had a different answer, I know. A student said 4 fractions. في واحد منهم قال لي miss we want or we need 4 fractions. وواحد تاني قال لي miss we need 5 fractions. طيب أنا سألت الفيرست ستودنت اللي هو قال لي 4 fractions. Why did you say 4 fractions only? He said like the previous problem. قال لي ميس عشان previous problem اللي احنا عملناها مع بعض قبل كده there were 4 fractions. Each one of them was quarter. يعني quarter وquarter وquarter وquarter. وبعدين when we add them we made one circular piece of wood that represent one whole. وسألت كمان السكند student he said 5 اللي قال لي 5 قلت له why you choose 5. He said because 5/5 makes one whole. قال لي 5/5 makes one whole. وعلى فكرة both are right. 4/4 makes one whole وكمان 5/5 makes one whole. The number of unit fractions will be determined بيتحدد ازاي؟ من ال total number of parts that the one whole is divided into. أو بحدده من ال denominator بتاعه. I think I know the question that came to your mind. أنا عارفة كويس أوي أنتوا بتفكروا في إيه دلوقتي. Some of your colleagues asked it as well. Do we always have to compose to a whole؟ يعني أنا لازم أعمل compose عشان أوصل ل one whole؟ The answer is no. It doesn't have to be one whole always. مش لازم كل مرة أعمل compose ل one whole. You can compose many fractions. ممكن نعمل composing لفراكشنز كتيرة أوي. تعالوا نشوف example كده. How many unit fractions of 1/4? We needed to make 3/4. يعني أنا محتاجة how many unit fraction عشان أكون أو to compose 3/4. How do you know? طيب think كده. We want to compose 3/4 using عايزة أعمل compose ل 3/4 باستخدام ال unit fraction of 1/4. طب دلوقتي أنا محتاجة how many 1/4? Yes, we need 3 fractions consisting of 1/4. How do you know? And can you note the denominator? Denominator is what? The denominator is 3. وده اللي عرفني ال number of the unit fractions. ده اللي خلاني أقول إن أنا محتاجة 3 unit fractions. Which means that if the denominator is 5 لو كان عندي denominator 5 يبقى أنا محتاجة 5 unit fractions. Okay? طيب. And now let's see 3/4. Here comes a question. طب دلوقتي أنا عايز أسألكوا سؤال. How could we write an equation to show the composing of 3/4 with unit fractions؟ هعمل composing إزاي ل 3/4 باستخدام ال unit fraction. خلاص احنا عرفنا إن it will consist of 3 unit fractions عشان النومينيتور بتاعي 3. So we represent this in the form of equation. تعالوا نكتب الكلام ده بقى في equation. We will write every unit fraction وbetween them plus. Okay, يعني هكتب 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. هو مش 1 plus 1 plus 1 gives me 3? Okay, and now let's move to problem number 2. Problem number 2 هو عايزني أعمل إيه هنا؟ عايزني to draw and label a composed model for these unit fractions. Okay? طيب now consider تعالوا نعتبر إن الunit fraction is a brick. اتفقنا الunit fraction ده زي البريكس بالظبط. Stick them side by side أو top of each other. ممكن أعملهم vertically أو horizontally on top of each other أو side by side as you wish. طيب how could they look like؟ تعالوا كده نرسم الشيب مع بعض ونكتب ال value of the unit fraction inside it. طيب I will draw it like this. Okay, and I will divide it into 5 parts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, because the fraction here is 1 over 5, and I will write the value of each part, which will be 1 over 5. يبقى each part الvalue بتاعه 1 over 5. And now let's move to problem number 3. Here problem number 3 عايز مني ايه؟ هو عايزني to create a model that represents 1 over 3 plus 1 over 3 plus 1 over 3 equals to one whole. ممكن استخدم circles وممكن استخدم rectangles as you wish. Now you can draw the whole circle divided into 3 equal parts. طيب أنا هستخدم circles. عشان أرسم ال one whole محتاجة إن أنا أرسم circle, okay, divided into 3 equal parts, and I will shade all the parts. Okay, and this circle represents the one whole. Okay, ممكن نرسمها بطريقة تانية، ممكن نرسمها 3 circles. Okay, يبقى 3 circles like this. And each one I will divide it into 3 equal parts, okay, and I will shade from each circle only one part from each circle, okay. طيب, and this represents the fraction which is 1 over 3. مش هو بيقول لي 1 over 3 plus 1 over 3 plus 1 over 3 يعني 1 part shaded plus 1 part shaded plus 1 part shaded gives me the whole one. And now I'll give you some time to solve problem number 4 and 5, and then we will review it when we are back. Now in problem number 4, let's see it all together. Here, as you see, problem number 4, he's asking me how many unit fractions compose 5/8. عشان أعمل composing لل 5/8 محتاجة how many unit fraction. This can be solved without using diagram. مش لازم خالص أستخدم diagram. ليه؟ عشان النومينيتور عندي كام؟ النومينيتور is 5, right? 5/8 يعني النومينيتور is 5. When I write 5/8, it will be like this, so the denominator is 5. So the answer will be how many unit fractions? Of course, I need the 5 unit fractions. Now let's move to problem number 5. Problem number 5 here, look at the strip diagram, write an equation using unit fractions to show how to compose this fraction. Now we'll find the shape is divided into how many parts. Look, it is divided into 4 equal parts and 3 parts only shaded, right? يبقى 3 out of 4. طيب, what is the equation? The equation is 1 over 4 plus 1 over 4 plus 1 over 4. 1 plus 1 plus 1 gives me 3 over 4. And this is my equation. And now let's move to problem number 6. Problem number 6, it is the same idea. Here, can you know how many shaded parts? Yes, count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here I have 6 shaded parts out of what? Out of 8. يبقى 6 shaded parts out of 8. Okay, يبقى this is my fraction. طيب, تعالوا نكتب الإيكويشن بتاعتنا. يبقى هعمل إيه؟ 1 over 8. هكتب 1 over 8 6 times because the denominator is 6. يبقى 1 over 8 plus 1 over 8 plus 1 over 8. Again, 1 over 8 plus 1 over 8 plus 1 over 8 equals to 6 over 8. And now, let's move to problem number 7. Here in problem number 7, look at the point E on the number line. How many unit fractions of 1 over 8 do you need to represent point E? أنا محتاجة how many unit fraction to reach point E. طب تعالوا نشوف كده. Let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. يبقى I need 5 over 8, right? I need here 5 over 8 to reach the letter E. And now let's move to problem number 8. Which of the following expressions is the same as 5 over 6? Yes, here's problem number 8. You want me to choose 5/6. Here we have 4 choices. The choose, you have to choose the right answer. طيب تعالوا of course from the name of the fraction, من النيم بتاع الفراكشن 5/6, we will know that we need 5 unit fractions, right? 5 is the numerator, so I need 5 unit fractions. كل واحد فيهم representing 1/6. So, which is the right answer? Yes, of course, letter C is the right answer. He repeated 1/6 5 times. يبقى the unit fraction is 1/6 that repeated 5 times by addition. Now you can express this fraction by drawing circles. ممكن نرسم الفراكشن دي drawing it through circles or rectangles as you wish. You know, at the beginning of our lesson, we will learn about composing fractions by unit fractions through different examples that we can meet daily and which are related to the context of the food, like the situation that we will know about now. The situation is in Connect part page 6, and here's the Connect part. طيب Connect part بتقول لي ايه؟ بتقول لي دلوقتي we have 2 families went to a restaurant. Okay, 2 families went to a restaurant. Each family ordered فطير. إيمان's family want their فطير. إيمان قالت أنا عايزة الفطير بتاعي cut into 6 equal pieces. وأيمن's family قالوا إحنا عايزين الفطير بتاعنا cut into 8 equal pieces. يعني إيمان طلبت 6 equal pieces وأيمن طلب 8 equal pieces. طيب if both فطير ال2 فطيرز are the same size نفس السايز بالظبط, which family will have larger pieces to eat؟ تفكروا كده and how do you know؟ وعرفتوا ازاي؟ If you remember لو فاكرين ال relationship between the denominator and the unit fraction which we studied at the beginning of our lesson, you will know who have the larger pieces. هتعرفوا على فكرة مين اللي عنده pieces larger than the other. Now we discovered together that زي ما اتفقنا the greater the denominator, كل ما الدينومينيتور بيبقى أكبر كل ما الفاليو بتاع اليونت فراكشن بيبقى أصغر. Or والعكس the smaller the denominator, كل ما الدينومينيتور بيصغر الفاليو بتاع اليونت فراكشن بيكبر. Can you say which is the denominator and which is the unit fraction؟ هو ايه الدينومينيتور وفين اليونت فراكشن in the فطير of أيمن's family وإيمان's family؟ تقدروا تقولوا لي؟ طيب the denominator is the total زي ما اتفقنا ان denominator the total number of parts in which one فطير was divided. The piece is the value of the unit fraction. اليونت fraction ده اللي هو البيس او الفاليو بتاع اليونت fraction اللي هو البيس. So the value of the unit fraction of the فطير which is divided into 6 pieces is greater, it is 1/6. يعني لو عملت كده 1/6 and 1/8, okay, which is greater? The value is greater than the other unit fraction which is 1/8. ده معناه ان ال 1/6 greater than 1/8. ليه؟ عشان قلنا كل ما الدينومينيتور بيصغر الفاليو بتاع اليونت fraction بيكبر, and that's why 1/6 greater than 1/8. And this will appear in a practical way when you represent the فطيرز with 2 drawings that are exactly of the same size. تعالوا كده نرسمهم مع بعض. طيب if I have 2 rectangles هرسم الفطير ده أكنه rectangle وريكتانجل. مرة هقسمهم 6 parts ومرة هقسمهم 8 parts. اوكي طيب الفطير ده قسمته 6 parts here والفطير التاني هقسمه 8 parts. Okay, طيب here is one piece of 1/6 and here's one piece of 1/8. So which is bigger? Yes, if we compare between the two unit of fraction هنلاقي ان ال piece of 1/6 greater than a piece of 1/8. And now this is the end of our lesson today. We learned what is the unit fraction. اتعلمنا ايه هو ال unit fraction and it is one part of the whole. We also learned كمان اتعلمنا that we compose fractions by addition or by adding the unit fractions together. وكمان اتعلمنا that when we add a number of unit fractions لما نعمل addition unit fraction that is equal to the denominator, it means that we are composing one whole. we can know the number of the unit fractions composing a fraction من النومينيتور. And now you can practice more and more on today's lesson and check your understanding by scanning the QR code on page 3 in your school book. It will direct you to the math textbook to solve the problems in practice part. Let's solve the first problem all together. And here, as you see, you want me to complete the table. Okay, here is the model fraction, unit fraction, composed fraction equation. طيب, here the model is what? The fraction is 2 over 4. تعالوا نكتبها كده مع بعض. My fraction is 2 over 4. What about the unit fraction? احنا قلنا الunit fraction يعني numerator is 1. يبقى أنا عندي هنا 1 over 4 plus 1 over 4, where the unit fraction is 1 over 4 only, right? So, let's compose fraction equation. What is the composed fraction equation? هكتب الإيكويشن بتاعتي اللي هي 1 over 4 plus 1 over 4 equals 2 over 4. And now, after we did the first example together, you know how to solve the rest of the problems by your own way. And now we have finished our lesson. Thank you so much for your watching and see you next lesson.